Tell me when I'm live, Cherie.
You are live.
Oh God, that was very fast. I'm live. Hi everybody, and welcome to the Vegan Mooncat. My name's Mark, and today we're going to be having a bit of a discussion, really. Oh, Cherie, your volume's up. Your volume's up.
Oh gosh, sorry, the phone was on.
She was just literally telling me not to have my volume up, and then hers is up right next to me. It's just typical, isn't it? So today we're going to be discussing, are vegans less likely to commit crimes? Now, when I wrote the heading, what I should have actually put, are vegans less likely to commit violent crimes? Because that's what I was actually thinking of. But once I'd written it, it was just that. So we've got a couple of guests here so far. Hopefully the third guest will turn up at some point, but if not, we'll keep chatting and see where that goes. So let's just add in. Should we see who's in first? Or should we just tell me off now? I've got to see who's in first then. So let's have a look at the comments and see who. Level Joy is in the house. Michael Askew. Ekaterina Maranova, welcome to you. VegMet Codbod, how are you? Nice to see you here. Cherie's in charge of clicking here for me. Lolly, how are you doing? Nice to see you here as well. We've got Level Joy, Cherie. Come on now.
Sorry.
You've the real thing. Nice to see you. Top 3 Berlin. Hello. Easy Breezy Vegan. I took my time saying that one. Now I'm vegan. Welcome. Thanks for coming. Dave, is it Davsy or Davesy? I don't know which one, but thanks very much for coming. And Teresa Jose, is that? I'm going for Teresa Jose. The vegan metalhead, thanks for coming. Nice to see you. And Bo, we're getting busy early on. Tracy Shuttleworth, thanks for coming. And that's it for now. So let's bring on our first guest. I shall add that you know him as the amazing vegan nutritionalist and animal advocate, Hench Herbivore. Hey, there you
Hello.
go. He's here. So hi, Paul. Are you okay?
Oh, very good, thanks.
He's showing all the gains off. All the gains. I do.
Just showing you my protein deficiency. How are we doing?
How are you, Paul? Doing okay? Thanks for joining us this evening. We see you in that lovely room with the piano. Paul may give us a tune later. He is very talented on the old fake ivories.
I'll see how it goes.
So so that is Paul. Anyone, I'm sure everyone here is probably subscribed to Paul, but if you're not, go and get it done. And we'll bring in our second guest, which is Walter, also known as the Vegan Yak.
What's up?
Hey, there he goes. How are you, Walter?
I'm great. I'll spare you from flashing my biceps, so that way you don't actually think that vegans are protein deficient.
I thought you were going to say so you don't make us jealous then.
No, that's definitely not the case. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no worries. Now, we are supposed to have Michelle Lowe on as well, but I'm not sure if Michelle is going to make it or not. If Michelle turns up, we'll add it to the stream and we'll have a chat with her. If not, you got us. You'll just have to make do and be grateful for for what you see in front of you. We're talking today, are vegans less likely to commit crimes, specifically violent crime, but any crime will do. But I think maybe we are prone to certain crimes, like freeing animals without permission of the but maybe other things. So the vegan metalhead, I don't know about, but got a felony for assault right after I turned vegan. That's not what we need to hear. Kidding.
Down.
Yeah. So maybe it was just some residual meat, because it was just after, so it could have been residual. I wouldn't worry too much. So I'll get rid of this guy then, so you can see us. Let's get into the conversation then. Now, I think one of the reason why I thought of this subject, even though I don't think there's a great deal of scientific literature on it, vegans do tend to say an awful lot that the root of all sort of violence is that we learn to be violent towards animals before before anyone else. And if we could only learn to love animals and not harm them, then that would carry over to our fellow human. And I think that's something that I've heard quite a lot from vegans, but it never really discussed, just thrown out there. So I thought we'd have a bit of a discussion about it. You guys in the chat, if you've got any questions or any sort of perspectives on this, feel free to stick them in the chat, and Sheree will pop them up on screen. And you're like the fourth panel member, you guys. So don't forget to put stuff in there. Don't just listen to us, even though those other two guys are pretty interesting. So you should listen. But yeah, so that's why I decided to do this. So I think one of the first things I wanted to discuss, because I think this is the sort of general consensus of what I think vegans are trying to get at, is that once you're vegan, you have more empathy for other creatures, other beings other than yourself. So that's what I really wanted to maybe touch on first, and see if you guys have any sort of things to say about this. But from my point of view, before I went vegan, I did find that I possibly did have less empathy for others, because I wasn't in the best of way, and I damaged myself considerably health-wise with animal products and general overeating, which is, by the way, much easier to do with animal products and processed foods than it is with a decent whole foods vegan way of eating. So yeah, I find that I was quite miserable and quite down within myself, and that sort of spilled over into me, sort of not wishing it on other people, but almost. I've said it before, misery loves company. And if you're not feeling at your best, and you're down and you feel rotten, you don't want anyone else to feel that good. So if you can bring them down to your level, then that's something we do. So, and after the fact, and when I started feeling better and I got to learn more about the animals and wasn't consuming them anymore, that empathy does spill over to other human beings at that point, where you want the best for them and you want them to switch, not only for ethical reasons to veganism, but also for their own health to do better. And you sort of are more prone to wanting people to uplift people than do them harm or wish them harm, if you see, in my opinion. So I think empathy is something that has definitely increased in me, all round, not just for animals, but for my fellow humans, since I went vegan. Paul, what do you think about that?
Hugely. As many people probably know, I have a bit of a checkered past. I was a doorman. I had a reputation for being like the psychotic one, and just out of fear, I wasn't a hard man. I just was fed up with being bullied as a kid. Got into fighting arts, got into steroids, like very silly. And yeah, I learned to stand up for myself as a doorman, and then I'm really embarrassed and horrified to say, but fighting became my adrenaline sport. And I don't believe, well, I was a bully, but I wouldn't attack someone for no reason. Like, they would have to initiate it.
Yeah.
But any excuse. If someone was to look at them funny, I'd say, like, what's your problem, mate? They'd probably be
much provocation.
Yeah, and if they answered back, like, they would be getting it. I'm really embarrassed and ashamed to say. And going vegan, and Earthling Ed quoted, I think this is Tolstoy, someone in the chat, or you guys let me know if this is wrong. He said, while there are slaughterhouses, there will always be battlefields. And I thought, that's a nice sentiment, but I don't really get it. I like that to be right, but I don't. But then I looked at my own life, and I just realized, like, if I don't want to harm a chicken I've never met, if someone's a bit rude to me, or aggressive, like, do I necessarily need to cave their face in, or can I think they're suffering, like, they're being made to suffer in their life, their suffering spilling over? Can I recognize that? Can I step out of my ego for a moment and excuse that and let that go? And I have done so ever since, and life's so sweet, man. Life is so much better. And historically, I would either smash the guy, and then I'd spend the next month worrying, are the police going to be knocking on my door? Am I going to lose my liberty?
So I suppose there is that. I mean, obviously you're a doorman and you're doing these things, which obviously, we've all done things in the past we're not proud of. So, but you've made massive changes. So you've definitely got a lot more to be proud of
Thank you.
now.
And just to finish up, like if I didn't get to smash them because it was broad daylight in the middle of like a load of witnesses, for the next, honestly, 6 months, every day I would remember that guy and I'd think, does he not know who I am? Like, I'll kill him. Like, and that would be eating me up. And I think the Buddhist saying is holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting your enemy to die. And these hormones, like these are damaging our health. And that's how I live day to day. Every day that would be going around to my head. It's not a way to live.
No, because I mean, obviously, we're talking about crime here as well, and you were stating that you were worried that any moment somebody could come and arrest you for something that you've done, which obviously the way you live now since you've been vegan and you're not involving yourselves in those sorts of situations anymore. And like you say, if you can't treat a chicken in that way, you're not going to treat your fellow man in that way. Those situations don't even arise for you anymore. Then which makes your life much more stress free, I would imagine. And when you're in a stress free sort of environment, it's you feel so much better about yourself, and you have such. I mean, you're so relaxed and so confident and so happy. And if anyone who knows you or watches you just knows that you don't sound you're nothing like the person you were. I mean, we all have our tendencies here and there when people get on our nerves, I'm sure. But you're actively looking at yourself within to make changes to better yourself, which is only really come about, would you say, since veganism?
It's purely the vegan thing. And I just think how much of like a monster I was. If I can change, well, anyone can change. And I have high hopes for everyone. I think anyone can go vegan. And I think it can heal the world. I truly, truly believe that with every ounce of my body.
Yeah, Lolly's saying, I definitely think that once you start fighting for the animals, you're less inclined to spend your time fighting in the literal sense. You put your time and energy into a more positive things, and that's her opinion. Well, I think it's an opinion a lot of us can share. I mean, what about you, Walter? What's your opinion on a sort of empathy towards other humans after going vegan? Did that change for you at all, or were you always just a great guy?
No. I've always been fantastic. No, I feel
and so
like
modest too.
Yeah. I'm glad that I just now know vegan Paul, because I wouldn't want a hench coming at me and caving in my face. That's for sure. Yeah, I feel like it's interesting because I think you brought up the hard part about this is that these are going to be like, this is anecdotal. This is not, a big, long study or anything that's been done. And we have some studies for certain parts of this that I think are worth to touch on, but it's just anecdotes. But certainly for me, I became more compassionate, or at least became more aware of my compassion, I would say, and started acting more in alignment with that. And that stretched into more like other parts of my life, and I wouldn't say just violence either. It changed a little bit of how I viewed like my political, outlook, and policies that I would vote for, leaders that I would vote for, all that sort of stuff. How I viewed certain policies, even within like work and all this sort of stuff. So, it's certainly like, I feel like there is a little bit of a trickle effect. And again, that could be individual. That's not necessarily at scale, because that's not a study. But for me, I definitely feel like it's affected other parts of my life. Easy Breezy Vegan and I, when we both went vegan at the same time, because we're married, for those of you that don't know, we just immediately
sorry, Walter,
started to change.
Is your video locking up, or is it just am I just seeing you freezing? Is Walter's video okay for you, Sheree?
It's freezing my end.
Do you have YouTube open at the same time, even if it's muted or playing?
Yeah, let me switch something.
I find StreamYard doesn't like YouTube open at all, particularly sometimes. So maybe if you've got a YouTube window open, close that down and see if that helps.
Is my one okay, Mark?
Yeah, yours is fine, I think, Paul.
Cool.
He's frozen completely now. I've cursed him. While we're waiting for him, Davesy is saying, "Why is no one talking
Can you still
about
hear me, or is it just
crime?
my video?
Just the video. Real crime here, 6 months and still no new vegan Mooncat flute video." Don't worry, it's coming. It's coming. I was talking to UK Vegan Family the other day, and it's on its way. It's basically the flute song on rocket fuel, so that should be with you pretty soon. So that's okay. So, sorry, Walter, what were you saying before I rudely interrupted with the video?
No, sorry. If you can still hear me, I might back out here in a second and then just try to rejoin. I was connected to my Wi-Fi. I just realized instead of my
Okay,
hardwire.
do
So
you
I
want to
might
do
need
that
to
now,
jump back in.
and then I'll read a couple of comments while you're just sorting that out. So I've got forge your own path. A lot of criminals are victims of suffering themselves in one way or another. When you eat suffering, you are more likely to suffer depression, anxiety, and I assume that means poor health. But the two together, yeah. I mean, I'm in agreement with that. I mean, Paul's obviously the nutrition expert here, but as far as I'm concerned, what you put in your body, the body requires certain nutrients to run correctly, both mentally and physically. And if you're short on any of those, or you're introducing toxicity of some description in there, causing the body to react in other ways and have adverse reactions to what you're eating with processed foods or obviously animal products, then that could definitely alter your behavior, I would have thought.
Can I add something, Mark?
Sure, push can, Paul.
Speaking to the anxiety, so previously, if I'm in a club or like a nightclub, I'm pretty anxious. I've got my back to the wall. I'm scanning the environment. I don't want people sneaking up behind me. Someone barges into me. I'm spinning around, ready to have a fight. That's my kind of reflex. Then I didn't go in any clubs for years, changing my lifestyle. And then I had to go to a nightclub. One of my PT clients was doing his first white collar boxing match. So I'm in a nightclub, people are drinking, and I realized that I was leaning on a rail near the ring with my back to, my back was open.
Okay.
And I realized I felt as cool as a cucumber. I felt really zen. I thought,
all right, okay,
this is refreshing. I sort of realized that my demeanor was so much different. And then I got barged.
Oh, okay.
And I couldn't care less. I just thought someone's drunk and they've accidentally.
And is that normally where you would have had a different kind of reaction?
Yeah, previously it probably would have gone bad, in all honesty.
No,
that was the difference. I'd stopped eating animals. When we eat proteins, animal protein, residues get into the colon that are not absorbed into the bloodstream, and they putrefy. They can't ferment, they putrefy, they create toxins. Cresol, putrescine, cadaverine. These are linked with depression, anxiety. If you're anxious, you're on edge, and when you're on edge,
you're more likely to do something that you wouldn't normally do. I would have thought.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's you. I think whoever just said that, was it Forge Your Own Path? I think they hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, spot on that. Walter, you're back. How's that?
I'm back. I'm hoping it's good. It is storming here, so hopefully nothing is going on.
It does seem a bit better. You're slightly robotic, but I think it's bearable. I think we're okay. I think maybe it was just easing in. Well, it's just a settling in period. I'm sure it'll get better. So I'll just read this quickly one from Dan, Grumpy Vegan Grandad. I had a very similar background to hench, doorman, etc. And I think I would never be like my former self as a vegan. Yeah, that's amazing. I know you've had good turnaround yourself there, Dan. So well done on that one. All right, she's popped another one up, so we'll read it and then we'll get back to you, Walter. Lolly, your body was more in balance. Your body was more in balance after getting rid of animal products. Going vegan and being better about my nutrition has helped my mental health too, an absolute ton. I mean, it's you put in the wrong fuel, you get an adverse reaction, and at the end of the day, there's even though we're going to go into some things later, so I won't go on about that. Yeah. So what, Walter? What were you saying before you went robotic?
Who knows? Yeah, I feel like actually that comment is probably like one of the main things that I was thinking about with this topic is just like there's two parts of this, which is, again, veganism really as the philosophy and then a plant-based diet. And I think like the plant-based diet we can point to and we can say just being healthier in general, you're probably going to be functioning better. And there's some studies about, that some of the ones that you sent over were talking about pesticides, antibiotics, all these things that are in your system that are going to cause more violence. And that's
of course. I mean, you've got the whole thing with pesticides and antibiotics and steroids and everything else that are pumped into animals. I mean, Paul could obviously say more about this, but than me or you may be able to say it too. That obviously lower down you eat on the food chain, less of those things you're going to have. Because if you're going to have some pesticides and etc. and contaminants on the plants, but which you can probably wash some of those off. But as you move up the food chain to like a few tons of animal that's eating so many pesticides and toxins over its entire lifespan, and you're eating that, the amount that going into your body is heightened considerably. I would have thought.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and then there's the other part of it, which is the philosophy part. And I feel like if you're really bought into the philosophy of not harming sentient beings,
yes, definitely,
it's probably going to make sense that you're going to not do that in other situations. But of course, a lot of violence is, not predetermined either. It's situational. And I don't know that, like, if you're put into a situation out of desperation or something like that, that you're going to commit a violent crime, I don't know that in the back of your head, you're going to go, hey, I'm vegan, so I'm not going to do this. I don't know that it's going to take over your body.
Maybe what Paul was saying before. He was saying obviously that I think you were off the stream at the time. He was saying in his previous life, if he was stood in a nightclub and somebody say bumped into him, he would have had a certain reaction to them, which may have not ended very well for the person bumping into him. But after being vegan and being in a nightclub and somebody bumped into him, he had a completely I don't care kind of reaction. It's like, oh yes, yeah, all right. So I mean, I know what you mean, but about conscious decision to do something violent or crime like, but there's also the unconscious thing where things stop affecting you quite as much when you've lived a certain way for so long, and you're trying to be more peaceful and ethical and do the right thing in life. Then the little things tend not to bother you as and I think that's what I think from what you're saying. We just move on to this then, because I think this is honing in on men, and it's not a phrase I normally use particularly, but I think this stems from something which is toxic masculinity. Is what I'm thinking. As men, you feel like you need to prove a certain, you live a certain thing, do certain things, eat certain things. If somebody bumps into you or they disrespect you, or they tell say something that you don't like to your girlfriend or whatever, or you're at a barbecue, you're not going to eat the lentil burger. You're going to eat the meat, because you're a man and you act a certain way. And I think that's a lot of the time what can get men into trouble and get them into sort of violent situations which end in them being arrested or committing a crime is. Even you're talking like peer pressure. So say your friends are going to go and do something that they shouldn't be doing, and they go, "Oh, come on, what kind of a man are you? Man up, come and do it." And it's that whole thing about you've got to be that guy. You got to eat that burger. You've got to drive the big truck. All these little things, and and they end up causing you to create a persona around yourself, which not only it makes it easier to harm animals and other human beings, it can get you in a lot of trouble. I mean, Walter, you got anything to say about that sort of aspect of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there would be correlation. I don't know that you're gonna find the link in causation here and stuff, but absolutely I mean, it's just, and that's violence is a part of masculinity just in general. Like, even without the what do you eat and what does it take to be a real man and all that sort of, like, we idolize and have forever basically the warriors, these big ripped warriors, and up until people like Paul shattering that myth, where you can be like that with plants. Typically the thought is, like, in order to be that strong warrior, you eat animal products, and so I think they're definitely linked, where it's like, in order to be a man, in order to be that warrior, in order to be that person and that leader, you eat animal products, because that's how you get big and that's how you get a warrior status. Luckily, we have people like Paul, that are definitely smashing that and go like, yeah, that's not what it takes. Like,
and
obviously that's not
nothing more manly than protecting the weak, people who are weaker than yourself.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you could just reframe the definition of what is masculine, and it wouldn't have to have anything to do with muscles. But if you're going to keep that as a part of it, you don't have to have animal products to be that type of a man, if that's what type of a man you want to be.
Definitely. Paul?
I think the bravest thing I ever saw, I think I've spoken about this before, but my training partner in 2015 was the reigning Mr. Universe, Barney Duplessis. And, I've been in mass brawls and just real crazy stuff. The bravest thing I ever saw, we were at the 2015 Mr. Universe show. massive auditorium. I was by far I'm looking in the wrong camera, sorry. Let me take that off there. I was by far the smallest guy in the whole auditorium. These were real steroid monsters. And they did all their competing, they did all their poses, and the judges were taking ages to deliberate. So the MC said, I will interview the athletes and, see what they're about. And when they got to Barney, saying, oh, how long did it take you to do your prep? And he's like, oh, yeah, I spent 12 weeks. And I did it as a vegan. He said the word vegan in front of this auditorium full of monsters. And you heard a lot of chuckling. And then slowly people started clapping. And that was brave. I don't know that I would have had the cojones to have said that there at that time on that stage, knowing 99.9 recurring % of those monsters, well, probably all of them were meat eaters. But he risked ridicule and attack off the back of it. Three of the bodybuilders said that they wanted to give plant-based nutrition a try, and what a brave guy. I think that's amazing.
That's definitely brave. I mean, when you're in those sort of environments, the tendency is to, because of the masculinity thing, you tend to just want to fit in with everything that everyone else is doing. And that's the same for, even if you take the bodybuilding sort of thing out of the equation, people who hang around in gangs with the friends and whatever, you end up being peer pressured into a certain way of life and a certain way of doing things, which can get you in trouble, outside the arena, in different circumstances. Grumpy, I think toxic masculinity, I've said that already, I don't know why I struggled then, is specific to where you live. My town, there's fights with police all the time. So you sort of grow up creating a tough persona to avoid violence from the bullies. Yeah, that's definitely a thing. And I think the thing is, the other thing is when we eat animals, obviously, they've been living very hard lives, and they've had very difficult time and then a very difficult death for the most part. And during that time, they've got obviously a heightened level of stress hormones in their body, and a lot of other things that are going on chemically within them just before they die. And then obviously, I know we cook it and other things which will remove certain compounds and whatever. Well, we don't, but people do. Well, not everyone does actually. We can't fully pour sferrage there, can we? Yeah. So with that high level of stress hormones and other things, Paul, what's your do you have any opinion on how those sort of compounds would affect a human body when they're ingested? Is there any science on that you're aware of?
I don't really know. I don't have specific science. It sort of makes sense, doesn't it? And certainly it felt that way to me, that I was getting benefit from not eating them. But is it enough of those hormones to cause an issue? Maybe. Yeah, I really don't know. I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't have any data. But what I will say is certainly meat and dairy is full of antibiotics, and antibiotics kill our good gut microbes. And if our gut microbes are out of order, then we're not going to have such good potential for mental and physical health. So I'm sure there's something there in one way. I don't know what perhaps the mechanism is, and maybe it's not the hormones in and of themselves. Maybe it is, but there's definitely something there.
The gut bacteria that we have in there, as far as I'm aware, can dramatically alter any animal, human or not. It can alter their behavior considerably, because these little microbes that live inside us have a particular drive for certain things that they want to happen, and they can influence the host. I can't remember the name of the ant. Is it the ant that the microbes that live within that can literally make it walk up a branch, sit there, attach itself to something, and commit suicide? So I think the microbes control it to the point where it can crawl over the branch that's over the water, and they can affect it to stay there until it dies, so it drops off the branch into the water, propagating the bacteria elsewhere to other creatures, so they can have a tremendous drive on what we actually do.
We did talk about that study earlier, Mark, didn't we, where what was that about? We were talking about bacteria. Oh, yeah. And there was a study which found if you have more of the Bacteroides strains, which you get from eating animal products, it actually lowers your level of empathy. And this is though those bacteria want you to keep eating animals. And so I think sometimes we're so shocked at how meat eaters can be so like blasé and like laugh at, you know, the stuff that we find horrific, but maybe it's not always their fault, and maybe the bacteria are controlling them.
Does that generally equate to, I mean, obviously I know there's a lot of violence in nature anyway, whether or not it's on some herbivores can be violent, obviously, but obviously we normally associate violence with carnivorous animals. I mean, and then normally have a very fierce, aggressive sort of nature for the most part, and obviously want to hunt. And there is a possibility that the fact that they're obviously their diet is fully carnivorous, that what they're eating is causing gut bacteria in their stomach to drive their behaviors towards that aggressive and fiercer attitude, which is definitely a possibility. I mean, to be honest with you, there's not as many studies as you'd like on some of these things, but you know, it's definitely something I think they should look at in the future to see if they can, you know, prove this 100%, or well, near it. You can never prove 100%, but prove, you know, get some studies in to try and prove things considerably. So we've got, I'll just read this quick comment before we go to you, if that's okay, Walter. I'm working with people with a forensic background who are sectioned, receiving treatment in mental health wards. One of them, a physically strong person, has on a certain day attacking violently over 10 times. He went vegan, stayed vegan for nearly 2 years, and his demeanor changed. Still a lot of work to do, but he's a much milder person now. And that says a great deal, doesn't it? Did you want to speak on anything we've said there, Walter, in the last few minutes?
Yeah, I think like, yeah, it's the chemical part of it, and within the body and stuff is always going to be a mess, because you know, there's always going to be there's going to be people that are going to be pointing to other mechanisms, and then of course, like the science, we got to, like, you have to have a lot of studies to be able to make, you know, claims and stuff like that. And the authorities don't make claims after just a couple of studies either. Like, what was it? Is like 70,000 studies that it took for the Surgeon General to say that smoking caused cancer, something like that. So it's like, you know, it's going to be tough to like prove out a lot of those things. But I think in the studies that we do have, there are at least, again, those anecdotes that are pointing to it. Logically, it makes sense. I mean, even if you just go and eat a healthy meal, like vegan or not, or whatever, if you try to eat like a salad over going to McDonald's or something, you're going to feel better, right? Like you're going to feel like 100%. You're going to get the nutrients that you need and stuff. You know, obviously we wouldn't for the moral side of things, you know, but yeah, I just feel like, yeah, it's kind of a mess, you know, on the nutrition side of things, because there's always those people that are going to, you know, try to fight it the other way to justify their habits and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, I just think, I think it's pretty logical. So for me, it's just, if you're taking the moral stance on it, that makes sense. Physically, if you're eating healthier and you're getting the nutrients that you need, you should be in a better place chemically in your body. And there are studies that talk about the pesticides, metal toxicity and stuff like that. So if you're eating like heavy amounts of fish and stuff and you're getting these toxins into your body and stuff, those are going to change like your thyroid function. Those are going to change your hormones. Those are going to, you know, change your irritability and all this sort of stuff. So, I mean, again, like you're having to like say, oh, this, and this, like as a chain. It's kind of like a slippery slope. It's not necessarily the case, but logically, I think we can follow it through and say, yeah, that makes sense. If you're putting these things in your body, they're going to affect your body, which is going to affect your mind and how you operate.
I mean, I think also, I mean, if we take the physiological aspect out of it, you know, with does food, you know, how it affects us, you know, if we're not getting the correct nutrition, or we're getting, you know, certain. I needed that back up, Sheree. What did you do with it? So yeah, but I think the other thing, as vegans, you know, obviously there is a dietary aspect to what we do. Our main driving force for most of us is we've made a moral decision to no longer harm or abuse sentient beings within the world. You know, not normally it applies obviously in non-humans. It is where we're going with that one. But I think once you've actually, I mean, this I speak for myself, but I mean, I was never a particularly violent person, but I you know, I had mood swings and anger, and you know, I've had situations before where I've been arguing with people, and you know, and you want to do the wrong thing, you know, because it's that toxic sort of that masculinity thing, you know. Somebody at one point we were in a garage and somebody was having a go at Sheree, my wife, and they were really having a pop at her. So I felt the need, you know, quite rightly, I suppose, in a way, is to stand up and say, "Oi, back down, buddy," otherwise we're going to have a problem. But in retrospect, now, if that situation happened again, I would say, Sheree, let's get in the car and let's drive away, because I think my thinking is a little bit different now, in the fact that I don't want to get in those situations for many reasons. But I think one of them is I can't imagine ever wanting to hurt somebody particularly. I don't want to be that guy. I think when you go vegan, it opens other avenues. You start thinking of other things outside yourself a bit more, and you start considering things around you in the world that aren't necessarily altogether just always to do with the animals. But maybe this is just me. So you guys can let me know. But you start thinking of the bigger picture. You start thinking of other things that are around you and how the world works, environmental issues. You seem to I don't know how to word it, but you just seem to look at the bigger picture, and you want to improve things not only for yourself but for everybody else. And being violent or committing crimes or doing the wrong thing just doesn't sit very well with that moral ethical sort of outlook. So I think it doesn't always happen immediately. Obviously, this is years and years of living a certain way. You get into a certain thought pattern, in my opinion, where you just want to do the right thing generally. If you see what I mean. That's my point of view. Anyway, Michael's saying, listen to vegan gays debating with non-vegans in animal rights server. It was still shocking, the lack of empathy and sympathy displayed by them. It's horrifying. I have watched it. I find it extremely frustrating. Very difficult, because there's no sound arguments for the most part. I get, for any part really. I'm just trying to be nice, but it's very difficult. Paul, have you got anything to sort of say with the sort of like what we were talking about there?
What was I going to say? So I start to zone out. I was going to say
it's really to do with your moral decision making and how
I think you just start to get very logical about things, don't you? And you just automatically, it's like you just start to do the right thing automatically. Like it's like you almost can't do the wrong thing. And I just know, don't get me wrong, I'm no saint. And occasionally I do think that guy could really do with us that, but it would probably do him good. But I just know, was I to do it, I would just hate myself, and I would be thinking, what's happened in his life to make him like that? I'm punishing him for his upbringing, for the way that his brain's just wired a bit wrong. I'm thinking of Sverige again. You know what I mean? It's just like you just want to be a good person, and you just follow those logical thoughts. And the conclusion is like non-violence.
Definitely. I was going to say, because I think one of the things that a lot of people tend to say, especially as a vegan, and I think I mentioned it a little bit before, is people do say that violence breeds violence, don't they? It's a common sort of sentence that people sort of throw out there. I mean, I suppose what I'm thinking is, if you've got the children and they're growing up and they're younger, and you're telling them that they're not allowed to say harm animals, you can't eat animals, you can't use them, you can't be mean to even a fish or a chicken or a pig or a cow or anything on the planet. You have to treat them with respect and never. So we're talking early on in developmental years. So I mean, if you're telling them that. And obviously, at the same time, you're telling them that they can't beat the fellow child, the siblings or peers in school or anything like that. You've got to treat everybody with respect. Do you think, as children, that they see the hypocrisy in because obviously as parents, you always say that you have to treat everyone respectfully and not be non-violent and don't commit crimes. Do you think kids can see the hypocrisy in their parents when they're sat there eating a burger, but they've been told not to hit the kid in the face? Or do you think that, or do you think it's sort of hidden? But as they get older and they do know about it, I mean, does that affect anything in any way? I don't know if I'm wording that right. Do you want to go for that, Waller, and see if I've spoke nonsense?
No, yeah, I think you're touching on a really important point, because people say all the time, like, oh, violence breeds violence. And I think we can say that that's pretty much true, because when we look at the studies and we go to slaughterhouse workers, they have higher rates of, violent crimes, PTSD, suicide, all these sorts of things. And they're the ones there creating and doing the violent action, sometimes against their will, but it's so they're the ones actually participating in the violence. And then they are outside, they have to disassociate. They have to go and, not be sensitive to the killing that they're doing in their job. Right. And so it makes it very easy for them to go and do it on the outside, which is why those stats exist. However, that's in comparison to like the normal population. So they have higher rates of violent crimes and stuff compared to the normal population. Well, when you compare to the normal population eats animals. So it's one of those things where it's like, no, I don't think that children are being exposed to that and being taught about the violence because they're not being taught where their food comes from. They're completely blind to it. So I don't think I think on that level, what you would have to be going towards if you were going to make this type of an argument is you'd have to be going to the chemistry. You'd have to be going to the diet. You'd have to be going to what's in their bodies.
Yes.
Because children at that age typically don't know where their food comes from, don't really understand that animals are dying and stuff. So they're not in a slaughterhouse, like they're not seeing it, so they're not associating it with violence. They're just viewing it as food. That's how it was for me growing up.
Sure.
Is just, this is just food, like there's nothing wrong about it. But I was still taught that violence is wrong. Like I still wouldn't want to go and hurt my friend at school or something, right? So
yeah. Do you think when they eventually do find out sort of where their food's coming from, and do you think the contradiction that they've been brought up following affects them in any kind of way? Do you think that is it? Did they call it the meat paradox? Or I got that wrong? Yeah.
No, they call it the meat paradox.
Yeah. Do you think that can alter the way a person behaves when they find out they've been living a double life their entire time? Or do you not think it's something that people actually care about?
Yeah, I think it's the veil being lifted, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there is the argument here of like which one's coming first, right? Are people becoming vegan and then therefore because of that and then living by their morals becoming more compassionate, or the more compassionate people becoming vegan? You could take a look at the even if we had a great study that showed like, wow, look at all these vegans that are they have such less rates of violent crimes and stuff. We could go back to like, well, like you were talking about before with nature. In nature, maybe there's some people that are going to be more violent. In nature, maybe there's going to be some people that are just more naturally compassionate. Are those the ones that are going vegan, or at least going vegan first before it becomes, more of the mainstream? I don't think that's the case. I mean, I think that there's people from all different walks of life, maybe ones that are even potentially more violent to begin with, that go vegan. There was a study that was done where they took prisoners, and this was one of the sources that you sent over to me, actually. But
yeah,
like,
it was a good one. Was this in the 90s, 2000s early study?
Yeah, and so it was like they gave prisoners the option of, and this is not a perfect study, I'll talk about it in a second, but like they gave prisoners the option of like either just going through the normal prison system, or they could choose to be on a vegan diet, do anger management, and I think the other thing was like do some other sort of practice.
I think it was Bible studies.
Yeah, it's a Bible study.
And anger management.
Yeah, so conflate, this is a problem because it wasn't just a vegan diet, so it's not a perfect study for that, but it was a component of it, and most of them had better rates of like not getting back into prison. They enjoyed their time and got out sooner, all that sort of stuff. So
yeah, even the violence within the prison was considerably lowered from what the study, that particular study said. And also even like they needed less supervision in the yard. There was a less prisoner on prisoner violence.
There weren't the racial divides within the prison.
Racial divides went away. So I can't see that being because this was not really a moral choice for them. I don't think that was necessarily a moral decision just not to start attacking each other for whatever reason. Maybe they no longer had the drive to do it because of some sort of like component within the food that they've been consuming being absent now. It had that sort of like that effect upon them, like physiologically, really.
Yeah, I don't think it's like a silver bullet. Like it's not like I don't, if Hitler really was like a vegetarian, which he wasn't, but if he was and he decided to go vegan, I don't think he would have not been Hitler. Like,
still as mad as a box of frogs, that man. There's no way you can do it.
Like I don't think it's just the silver bullet that's going to change everything. And I think this study is a good thing to point to, where it's like they also took anger management, classes. They also did a Bible study. So there are other things at play. Yes. But can it play an effect, and can it be a part of that moral philosophy that they're buying into that then changes their habits in the future? I think so. And I don't think it mattered that they were potentially violent before or potentially more compassionate before. I think it can alter your habits either way.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's strange how hurting animals is a psychopathic trait, yet we do it daily for food. Is there anything that you want to touch on what we've said on any of these things? So at the moment, Paul?
No, I don't think I've got anything to add.
Okay. The thing I was gonna mention is this goes on to Ekaterina Marinova said earlier about the anecdotal information, about the guy in where she works. I was looking at something from the University of California. Now, I'm going to put some up on screen, but I'll have to put it about 3 times because it only let me put so much of it in the text box, to be honest. So it said with people who eat meat, it causes like intoxication, excitement, and also lethargy, sleep, lustfulness, and an attraction towards sort of like sensuality, and the intellect becomes erratic. And this was a study that they were doing, and irresolute by being swayed by the mind and the senses. So because of the sensory overload and the sensory pleasures and stuff that they're getting from like the hit from the cheese and the meat, because it does have an effect on you for sure. That other things that are maybe a little bit more mundane, sort of like just going in and then walking the dog or whatever, they all become a little bit dull. So you're looking for more and more things to excite you or pull you out of this lethargy when you're not getting the buzz from certain things. I think what they were trying to say, and they're basically saying it cannot, and they end up not being able to distinguish between good and evil, true, false, that sort of thing. And they were generally talking about the way food does that. I mean, a lot of people, who eat cheese and dairy, all dairy and everything else, it does have a bit of a pleasure center kick, doesn't it? Or have I got that wrong, Paul?
Yeah, I think there's something about hyperpalatable, hypercaloric foods, and it like deadens the dopamine pathway. So anything that you can find enjoyable, be it sex or food or different things, it just becomes like deadened and lessened. So when you go whole foods plant-based, you're just more excited by life in general. It definitely
little things seem to be more fun.
Yeah, I think
so with really your dampened dopamine levels through eating a higher level of animal products, then that would mean then you would have to keep doing more and more sort of outrageously sort of crazy things, if you will, to sort of get the same kick that you normally would, which could be like doing something dangerous like robbing a convenience store. I mean, because your mates are doing it, you may not even need the money. It's just something to do of an evening, or breaking in someone's house just to like rummage around in the fridges. I don't know, or even horrible subjects like you're not getting as much pleasure from being with a partner or something else, so you end up having other tendencies towards maybe be rape and some more of the horrific sort of crimes, to get that sort of like buzz, which you have been dampened by the food that you're eating. So normal relationships don't seem quite as important to you anymore. So you need something else, and plus that's something to consider. I mean, what do you think, Walter?
Yeah, I think we should just be careful when we're making this, like, these inferences about diet and stuff too, because again, and the stream that I just did was talking about this a lot with language, but it's just, if we need to separate plant-based diet from veganism, because just because, let's say that you give up animal products and you become a vegan for moral reasons, that's fantastic. Now you won't have maybe as much toxins, maybe you won't have as much of the antibiotics and some of these other harmful things that are in animal products. But if you go and eat just junk all the time, that doesn't mean all of a sudden now you're getting all the nutrients that you need. That doesn't mean that you're going to have the good energy. You might be just eating a bunch of sugar, which is also going to probably cause you to be like irritable and stuff as well, and not be operating at as high of a level. So again, it's like, it's veganism in itself, I don't think is going to just make you like operate perfectly.
You mean on a dietary sort of aspect, or just generally?
I know on the diet aspect of it. If you're buying into the moral philosophy, then I think it makes sense that if you're going to not harm sentient beings, that's going to include humans, and you're probably going to extend that too. I mean, you could not, you could just be speciesist and hate humans. I mean, so you could operate that way. I mean, you would like to think that humans are going to be just nice to everybody else because they care about certain humans, but they care about people within their social circles. They might care about people that have the same color skin or religious preferences or whatever it is. So like, just because all of a sudden you care about animals doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to care about every species the same or care about humans as well. But I think the moral part is a little bit more bought in there. The diet part of it, absolutely. If you're switching to a whole food plant-based diet and you're getting all the nutrients that you need and stuff, you should be cleaning up. You should be able to feel and operate a lot better. But just because you're vegan doesn't mean you're doing that. So that doesn't mean that all vegans as a whole are going to be getting that energy and feeling.
Don't get me wrong. There's going to be some vegans that are up to no good at some point. I'm not saying it's a cure-all for sure. I mean, Lolly's saying a lot of people who commit violent crimes started off hurting animals when they were younger. I mean, there is that aspect to it where, and maybe that's just because they don't have access to humans at that point, and it's easier to get hold of the animals more than anything else.
I've got a question.
Sure, Paul.
Is it non-vegan to be exploitative or cruel to humans, as humans are a type of monkey? What is the real definition? What is? I don't even know, if I'm honest.
You're just going to go straight up stir the pot, aren't you?
Yeah. Have you guys got a perspective, or anyone in the chat? Like, what's, because it would be like it's reverse speciesism, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, an ism, like, against your own species. So yeah, I mean, I would say that was
like
not right.
You say, Paul, we're animals as well. So I'd like to. So I would like to extend the same level of compassion that I'm now feeling towards animals to humans also, and not exploit them for any other means. Not commit any violence against them. Certainly never murder them. That in my opinion, that is a valid point, Paul, and we should be. I mean, I'm not sure about the. Maybe Walter can say the actual definition. Does it actually, is it non-human animals, or does it just say animals?
Yeah, I think it does just say animals, but I think the inference is certainly non-human animals. So I think technically from I think technically from a definition standpoint, you're going to say veganism is about non-human animals because they're the ones getting exploited for our food system. They're the ones getting exploited for our clothing and everything like that. There's not, human clothing, at least at scale, so it's, I think when we're talking about veganism, it is the focus on the victims that are there. I think, however, it would be inconsistent if you're placing your vegan beliefs on sentience, or you're placing it on something about feeling pain, pleasure, well-being. It would be inconsistent to not include humans into that. That would be like Paul is saying, species, just you hate humans.
Yeah.
So, which I think vegans get typecast a lot. People say, or stereotyped into that, say that vegans like, oh, you just hate humans and stuff like that. Yeah. It's like, no, that's not the case. I think this is a perfect conversation about this. Well, this is like, I mean, and Paul, for you, like, you started to care more about humans, like, and brush off the small things and stuff. Like, you started to not cave their face in.
Exactly.
So
there'll be a great get out clause when people say, oh, vegans hate humans. You could be like, well, no, that would be non-vegan to hate. So I just think that I wish that is the case, and it'd be just a great get out clause.
I mean, a lot of the time as well, when they say that we hate humans, it's because they think there's some detrimental effect of being vegan on human health, and somehow we're impacting our humans and ourselves at the just so obviously animals can't be hurt. But that's a complete and utter load of nonsense. I mean, humans can absolutely thrive being on. Don't get me wrong. If you're eating nothing but Doritos and Coke, you're not going to do very well, even as a vegan, are you? But if you're eating a very sort of healthy vegan lifestyle, while obviously not harming animals and then dealing with the philosophy, the moral aspects of it, you 100% can be super healthy, at all stages of life. I don't want to do the whole, the Dietetics Association quote that we all seem to do, but it's true. I mean, I've got children, who have been vegan for a few years now, and I think when Bella started veganism, was she 8 or 9, Cherie? 8 or 9. Obviously, I wish she started earlier. And she's thriving. My son William has Asperger's, or Asperger's, however you want to pronounce it, and he had a lot of difficulty with certain food textures and sort of the things. And he was underweight for most of his life, his earlier life. And when he went vegan, and he made the moral connection, he realized he had to change the types of food he was eating in order to live and survive as a vegan, and he embraced, and that moral drive made him force himself into food choices which he would normally never eat, and he's now come up to a normal weight and is thriving. And the same with my lad Thomas and etc. and my daughter Bethany. So Yeah, I've got 4 kids being productive.
I can't believe that you would force this lifestyle on them. How crazy of you.
And then you've got the testosterone in order to produce them.
yeah, true.
Well, they're very happy kids. Yeah, they don't do without anything. I think they're very well balanced. They don't have any. I mean, this could just because of the way I bring them up. I'm not going to say anything other than that. But they don't have any terrible tendencies towards violence or aggression towards each other or any of the people that they go to school with. So yeah, I think they're thriving. So and I think that's a lot of the time where people go, "Oh, you're killing yourself. Look at your vegan deterioration. I can't believe you're trying to kill your children by making them eat, like on a vegan lifestyle, etc." Yeah, it's just all a load of old nonsense and an excuse. I care about humans, my children, and myself just as much as I do animals, and I don't want to see any of them suffering.
But the nice part about raising kids this way too is it actually it just helps you ground the belief, right? Many people teach their kids like the golden rule, and that they shouldn't hurt other people, but they don't necessarily articulate why. Like they don't necessarily exactly tell them like what it's about. And I think when you start teaching your kids, as I have and as you have, about veganism, and get them to live that lifestyle, you are teaching them about, it's about them feeling pain and not being well-being, and you wouldn't want that done to you. I think it articulates it better. I think it grounds the belief better. So I think that's good. As far as like the humans part of it too, is like one of the biggest reasons to eat a plant-based diet, not necessarily to be a vegan, but to eat a plant-based diet, is the effect on the environment. And the effect on the environment affects every species. So yes, if you're like, I want to save the environment, but I specifically want all humans to die, that would be a strange position to take. I guess you could, but vegans are not out there hating on humans. We want to save the animals, save the environment.
Yeah, there's probably going to be the exception where somebody says all humans are a virus and we should all be exterminated and give the planet back to the animals. But I'm not one of those guys. I'm not one of those guys. I think we can make the world a better place for all of us. None of us need to suffer needlessly. So,
amen.
So I think we're getting on a bit. It's nearly past. We didn't want to run over too long. Keep it short and concise, so people aren't like wanting to throw bricks at the screens or anything from having to watch me for too long. Is there any sort of closing thoughts from either of you guys that you want to say, Paul?
I've got nothing prepared. I did want to mention a statistic that we were touching on earlier.
Okay.
I think I saw on an Earthing Ed video, because he does his research, and he said where a slaughterhouse opens up, something like there's 300% more like domestic violence reported
in the area where that opens.
Yeah, and so I think that we were talking about Vegan Yak was saying, wasn't he? And just if you're willing to do that to animals, you're more likely to do that to humans. And I think we can infer that humans, like vegans, not wanting to eat animals, surely there'll be that stepwise change again where we're going to be less violent towards humans. I think we can just make that inference, really.
Yeah, and, I mean, it's quite a logical one to make. I think. I mean, obviously we're fully aware that not all the studies that we've got all the studies under our belt to prove this sort of thing.
I think the last thing I'd like to touch on
logical sense, doesn't it?
Sorry, say again.
I don't think all the time. I mean, obviously, it's always nice to have studies under your belt to back things up. But sometimes we can, as logical, rational, reasonable people, sit back, look at a situation, and go, "Yes, this is definitely the better way, and this could be causing this kind of behavior or reaction in a certain person." You don't always need like a big scientific paper, 3 million sheets long to know that if you're in a slaughterhouse killing animals day after day by the thousands or the hundreds, that if you go home and somebody in your household or your neighbor angers you, you're not going to have as much difficulty in whacking them in the face or going into in and getting a gun out and shooting them in the head, because at the end of the day you've been bolt gunning like 1,000 animals that day. What's one more animal? It seems logical to me anyway. What about you, Walter? I like the way you're laughing at me.
Yeah. No, I mean, it does seem perfectly logical. This comment up on the screen, it was up there about just like it would make sense that it would follow that people would care about humans if you taught children to care about animals. yeah, unless there was an extreme amount of cognitive dissonance in our population, except for in this circumstance, it would be them out hurting humans, even though they care about animals. So I wouldn't say it's impossible that that situation could exist, just like the current cognitive dissonance exists. But yeah, no, I think so. I think the question that I think is maybe more in a gray area here, and this is what you brought up in the beginning, because we started going down this violent crimes part, but what about just crimes in general? Like, especially, for the people that are willing, because I also think that there's a good portion of vegans that are like rebellious in the sense that they're willing to rebel against society. They're willing to be outside of the norm. And I think this is a great point, is just that if vegan, we can at least probably make the claim that vegans are not going to become more violent when they become vegans, because we just get ridiculed and shit on all the time. And you don't see vegans out there just on killing sprees all the time. So we put up with a lot of shit and we don't act on it necessarily. So I think we can at least say that we're not more violent in that way. But I think that there is a part of vegans that, again, they're willing to be okay not being in the norm, being, ridiculed, rebelling against the system and stuff, not following along just blindly. They've decided to take this leap of faith outward based on their morals or whatever reasons that they have.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, like Gary Roscoe, when he got jailed for freeing all the animals and bankrupting that business, which is fantastic, by the way, Gary. I mean, that's a crime. That's a crime. But yeah, but it's morally justifiable, in my opinion.
It's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do, like Paul says. So it's maybe we can do certain other crimes and justify it in our head because it's for the greater good of an animal.
Yeah. But do you think that vegans would then maybe take that to the next level? Like, if we're willing to say, you know what, this crime, because we're saying legality doesn't equal morality here, and we want to, this crime's okay because it's for the greater good, because we're going to go trespass, do the sit-in, we're going to go do this. And, but where is that line where we go, okay, you know what? Yeah, crime and killing is bad, but it's for the greater good.
Yeah,
like what it's the face caving where we have to draw the line.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, not everything that's right is lawful, is it? And you can. I think I would possibly be able to justify the fact, like a vegan going in, trespassing, sitting down, in a field, or outside a slaughterhouse doing a vigil, or somebody freeing a bunch of animals that are going to be murdered. Because I can think to myself, that is the right thing. It may not be the lawful thing to do, but it's the right thing. But if they then went further and they broke into somewhere and there was a security guard in their way and they killed him or harmed him in some way to get to their end game, I would say that's not justifiable at all, because they've harmed another animal to save other animals. So from my point, I think that's not the way to do it at all. And plus, then the outside world's view of that action done by the vegan doesn't help the movement move forward in any way. In my opinion,
it's about non-violence, and you can't fight for freedom, and it would just make us look terribly bad. I was so grateful at the last animal rights march. We stopped outside McDonald's, or the one from last. I was so glad that no one, because I could have imagined someone throwing a rock or kicking off or something, and I was so grateful that no one did, because that really would have sent the entirely wrong message. I was quite surprised there wasn't. Do they call them agent provocateurs, where they plant someone to make it look as though?
Yes.
I'm quite surprised that didn't happen in Lawrence. But yeah, so grateful. And yeah, we need to keep our hands to ourselves, basically.
Yes, for certain. So any last words from you, Walter, before or Paul, before we sort of start wrapping things up?
No, I think that would be the leaving thought is just, not that I'm going to make a call to incite violence,
but don't do that.
But where is that line, and I think it's interesting for moral discussions and for philosophical discussions, not necessarily for actual actions. But if we took a look back, and it's always easy to point to like Hitler, if somebody would have killed him earlier, would it have been better? And then it would have been like, oh, well, that would be violence. That's wrong. But a lot of people say, yeah, but for the greater good. Now, of course, you couldn't have maybe foretold what was going to happen. So there's debate there. But yeah, I think it's just an interesting part with vegans, just like we are willing sometimes to bend the rules, break certain laws or whatever it is, because we care so much about the cause. And a lot of us are not doing those things. Most vegans are not. Most vegans aren't even outspoken. They're not activists at all or anything. But yeah, how far is too far? You know, and how far is what's the line there? And are vegans more likely? I saw a comment where they thought that vegans were more likely to commit crimes and violent crimes against the people that are in the industries. I haven't seen that bore out. I would love to see a study there or see if something was there, but I don't think that's necessarily the case.
Obviously, I don't think I've seen too much of that. I have seen, you know, obviously there's examples of it with like Regan Russell and, you know, and other things where vegans have been hurt while trying to do non-violent protesting and stuff. And I'm sure there are times where, I mean, it depends. I mean, a lot of people say, some people will say, oh, that vegans militant and they're violent, and it's because they're shouting loud with words, you know, and suddenly
violent words.
Yeah, violent words, and somehow they're worse than the violent actions of the stake they're currently shoving down their neck. So it's a funny one, but I know what you mean. We are willing to go to some way to breaking laws if we think it's morally justifiable. But in my personal opinion, it becomes not morally justifiable if you start harming any humans or any non-human animals at all, or negatively impacting other life on the planet, basically. That's my view, and I think with the amen it was Paul. So I'm sure you feel much the same, Walter, but I won't speak for you.
No, yeah, definitely, I agree.
Well, thanks very much. I hope that's it. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. It's been an interesting talk. Obviously, we'd like more science around this. So if any scientists out there, get some done so we can actually, you know, prove certain aspects of the physiological thing. But I think we can all agree that, once you've gone vegan and you open your eyes to the suffering of other beings that are non-human, it's much easier then to respect the rights and the lives of humans as well, and do less violence generally, you know, towards anyone, or commit less crime. And you know, from my point of view, maybe, you know, I'm sure there's exceptions to every single rule. So, but I know from the people I've spoken to who have been vegan, and Paul and other people and like Grumpy Vegan Grandad, who've had a different kind of past before going vegan, it does seem anecdotally to have made massive changes to their personalities and how they interact and their propensity to commit a crime, you know, so it's all good. Anyway, so unless anyone's got anything to say, I better let it go. Now I'm vegan, saying thank you, Mark, Paul, and Walter. It's been interesting. Thank you for coming. Thanks to everyone in the chat for coming. Michael Askew, excellent stream. Thanks, Mark, Sheree, and everyone for the great comments. Yeah, Sheree, you're all right. You've done pretty good there, to be honest. Thanks very much. But yeah, so there we go. I won't keep waffling on. Thanks everyone for coming. Thanks to Paul and Walter, Hench Herbivore and Vegan Yak. Go subscribe to those guys if you're not already, which I'm sure you already are. And if not, as Paul would say, why? Don't make Paul come smash your face. So take care, everyone, and have a good evening, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
See you guys.